The government swerves a food supply disaster, striking a deal to restart production of CO2. The shortage caused problems right across the food industry, but the intervention comes at a cost and it won't stop our bills going up.
Resolving the CO2 crisis is removing one of the problems that we face. But there are massive issues still with the rising cost of electricity and gas and issues around labour shortages that continue to put huge pressure on our supply chain.
Also tonight, the mystery of the murder of a teacher whose body was found near a community centre. Nature's raw power in full flow as La Palma's boiling lava continues its path of destruction. And Tom's tears, group hugs and giving back. The Wanted reunite to stand up to cancer.
All the fans, all the crew, just everyone involved, man. Everyone's just been amazing.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. The government's intervened to stop looming food shortages by striking a deal to restart production of carbon dioxide at the country's biggest provider. It had been paused because the soaring price of natural gas. The intervention will help many parts of the food industry, from brewing and packaging to the slaughter of livestock, but details of the deal haven't been revealed yet, and it's feared it may still see our living costs go up even more. Here's our political reporter, Shihab Khan.
Good boys. Calm down.
That's what the government wants us all to do, but with concerns about supplies, many are far from calm. Farms like this one in Essex are preparing for their busiest period, Christmas, and carbon dioxide plays a big role in that. Paul Kelly sends 3/4 of his turkeys to other suppliers who use the gas, of which there's a shortage, to stun the bird before slaughter and to give it a longer shelf life.
There's a turkey business supplying Christmas, and we're a few weeks away from Christmas, so I couldn't imagine it wouldn't be sorted by then, but if it wasn't, it would be a disaster. If the people that we grow for, the bigger guy, if they won't take the turkeys at Christmas, then we're bankrupt after Christmas.
That's on top of labour shortages and the rising cost of production. But this morning, the government was keen to tackle the crisis with CO2.
We've had an issue with carbon dioxide production. That's something that I'm trying to fix right now. And in fact, I will be speaking, as I have done over the last 2 days, to people in one of the key carbon dioxide manufacturing production companies to make sure that we can get production up and running again.
The government has now secured a deal with that key CO2 production company, CF Industries, after they shut 2 of their plants that produces 60% of the UK's food-grade supply of the gas. Getting them reopened is key, as carbon dioxide is used to stun animals prior to slaughter, in vacuum packaging to keep food fresh, and it's also contained in fizzy drinks and beer.
Resolving the CO2 crisis is removing one of the problems that we face. But there are massive issues still with the rising cost of electricity and gas and issues around labour shortages. We won't run out of food, but we won't have a Christmas like we're used to seeing in previous years.
It's not yet clear what the government has agreed to get CO2 production restarted at this company's plants, but many will wonder if the taxpayer will be out of pocket. It meant the Prime Minister, who's on a visit to New York, faced some tough questions today.
We have a long-term strategy for sorting it out, but also a short-term strategy for trying to alleviate the immediate pressures on the public. But
that's not going to reassure people, Prime Minister, who are really worried about how they're going to get through the winter.
They shouldn't be worried, because this is a problem that we will fix, and we will do everything in our power to help people in the short term.
As the government tackles these issues, it will hope that it can keep supply running and avoid any significant disruption. Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
The energy regulator, Ofgem, has defended itself against claims it should have done more to stop the collapse of some smaller suppliers. Officials held talks with bosses today as another provider tumbled, the 5th of the current crisis. It blamed the recent surge in gas prices, but as our consumer editor Chris Troy now explains, millions of households are facing painful price rises.
For years they've been telling us to switch and be savvy. Now customers wonder just how savvy the energy industry is to end up in this crisis. David Carr's supplier collapsed. Now he's expecting to face a doubling of his fuel bill.
Should have done more checks to start off with to make sure that they were suitable to be energy suppliers. But I also think when something as a utility goes into financial difficulty, the government have a responsibility to protect consumers from massive price hikes.
5 energy firms have stopped trading so far in this crisis, with a total of almost 700,000 customers. Anyone affected by a company failure is advised to take a meter reading. Don't switch, instead wait, and your energy supply and any credit balance will be transferred to a new supplier. If your energy firm fails, it's the industry regulator Ofgem that decides where you'll be switched. Bills can rise, but must remain below the dual fuel price cap, about to be £1,277. Today, the sector's leading official told me widespread price rises are likely due to an increase in wholesale costs.
As costs rise in the energy system, ultimately they will be fed through to bills.
Wholesale prices have been rising since the beginning of the year. Shouldn't you be looking at these firms to make sure that they could continue trading, they have the right practices in place?
You've got to understand that the scale of the change in cost has been quite dramatic, particularly in August, where prices went up by 70%.
After meeting officials today, some firms want big changes to price controls.
Price capping was obviously introduced for good reasons. We understand that. But at the same time, we cannot go on forever asking suppliers to supply energy to customers at below the cost. And that's what's been going on for several years now.
Millions of households will feel the financial impact as more than 30 years since privatisation, customer choice shrinks and prices surge. Chris Choi, ITV News.
Well, our Deputy Political Editor, Anushka Asthana, has joined us in the studio. Anushka, is the government worried that all of this will end up hitting us financially?
Oh, ministers I've spoken to today and advisors are really worried about this. These are things that are going to have a really big impact on people's day-to-day lives. I mean, people notice things like energy bills. They certainly notice when they're paying more than they used to in the supermarket. And then there are more general worries about inflation and whether it might go on longer than predicted. And ministers know that while there is this pressure on the cost of living, there's also a squeeze coming on the amount that people come in. Next year there'll be that national insurance increase that everyone is going to notice because it's going to be written on your payslip. But much sooner than that, in 10 days, the furlough scheme is coming to an end. Lots of people will be worried about their jobs. 6 days after that, that £20 increase in universal credit is also going to be reversed. And so there is a lot of worry. Treasury ministers had this all baked in, the second half of it, but with prices as well, they know it's going to be difficult. And, the former Tory leader, Ian Duncan-Smith, said to me that it looks like it could be a perfect storm for people in the run-up to Christmas.
OK, Anushka, thanks very much. Well, for more detail about why gas prices are surging and what to do if your provider goes bust, head to our website, itv.com/news. A third Russian spy has been accused of attempted murder over the 2018 Salisbury Novichok poisonings. Detectives today named Denis Sergeyev as a suspect, having previously identified 2 others in the case. They say all 3 remain dangerous individuals, but the chances of them ever being convicted remain close to none, as our global editor, Rohit Khatru, reports.
He used an alias when he arrived at Heathrow 2 days before the poisoning. But the man who called himself Sergei Fedotov is a suspected member of Russian military intelligence. It's 3 years since a deadly nerve agent was deployed on the streets of Salisbury. Fedotov is alleged to have been the commander while his team went to Wiltshire to use Novichok against former double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter. There were already 2 suspects, Alexander Petrov and Ruslan Borisov. British authorities have been trying to put them on trial. Russia said no and put them on TV instead, where they said their trip to Salisbury was simply to take in the sights.
There's the famous Salisbury Cathedral, famous not only in Europe but in the whole world. It's famous for its 123-meter spire.
Sergei Fedotov arrived at Heathrow from Moscow around 11 a.m. on the 2nd of March 2018, 4 hours before the others arrived at Gatwick. He stayed at a hotel in central London that weekend and is thought to have met the other suspects several times. They travelled to Salisbury on March the 4th. Later that day, the Skripals and police officer Nick Bailey were poisoned by Novichok. Fedotov didn't leave London and caught a flight to Moscow on the afternoon of the 4th.
We will not let this go.
The Home Secretary promised persistence, but couldn't promise justice.
We respect the people of Russia, but we will do whatever it takes, everything it will take to keep our country safe.
There is almost no chance that any of the Salisbury suspects will be extradited to the UK from Russia.
I feel frustrated at the fact that they're bringing it up again. And it's not the first time, it's the second time.
Charlie Rowley became ill after the attack, which killed his partner, Dawn Sturgis.
Somebody needs to pay for the trouble that's been caused. Dawn's lost her life. Her children have lost their mother, and that's a hard thing to deal with.
Fedotov is unlikely to return to Britain, and suspected links to plots elsewhere in Europe are being investigated. Rohit Khatru, ITV News.
In a separate development, Russia has been found responsible for the deadly poisoning of another of its former spies. Alexander Litvinenko was an outspoken Kremlin critic. He died in London back in 2006, having drunk tea laced with a rare radioactive substance. The European Court of Human Rights ruled state involvement was the only plausible explanation. A murder suspect who was arrested over 4 deaths in Killamarsh at the weekend was taken to hospital with self-inflicted injuries. The 31-year-old is still in police custody after the bodies of a woman, her 2 children and another child were discovered on Sunday morning at a house in Derbyshire. Police are continuing their investigation. A primary school paid tribute to its brilliant teacher after she was found dead at a park in southeast London. Sabina Nessa, who was 28, was described as kind, caring and dedicated. Police say they are treating her death as murder and are appealing to the public for information. Chloe Keedy reports.
Sabina Nessa was 28. She was a primary school teacher, and she was murdered as she walked through a park not far from her home. As police in Kidbrooke in southeast London today combed it for clues, 3 miles away at the school where she worked, staff had the difficult job of consoling the children she taught. The head teacher said, "We are devastated by Sabina's tragic death. She was a brilliant teacher. She was kind, caring and absolutely dedicated to her pupils. She had so much life ahead of her and so much more to give." Sabina was attacked on Friday evening, but her body wasn't found for nearly 24 hours. Police are doing extra patrols to try and reassure people who live in the area, while also today appealing for their help to catch her killer.
This did not happen in the middle of the night. People would have been in and around the park at the time. If you saw anything at all, even if you think it may be insignificant, we would ask you to come forward.
Steph and Emma walk through this park every day. They didn't know Sabina, but on Friday evening they planned to hold a vigil here in her memory.
So we felt compelled kind of to organise it, just to bring the community together, support the family at this difficult time and just highlight what is happening to women at this time. This day and age, you should be able to walk freely as a woman on your own wherever you want, and that's just not the case anymore.
Today people left flowers here, an expression of their shock and grief. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
Still to come in the ITV Evening News. A victory for veterans' families over struggles with mental health and...
I'm really happy to be along for this, and obviously it's a bit of a sad occasion in a way, but it's I'm just hoping I can help out any way I can, really.
The stars turn out for The Wanted's Tom Parker at his charity cancer concert. Those stories and more after this short break. Welcome back. ITV News has long highlighted the mental health battles veterans can face after leaving the armed forces and their struggle to get the right support. And tonight we can reveal that they've won an important victory which could see them get better help in the future. For the first time, official records will be kept of veterans who take their lives in England and Wales. Rebecca Barry has heard from one bereaved family.
He was an amazing dad. He was very loving, he was very caring.
One of too many veterans so scarred by post-traumatic stress disorder, he ended his life. But the suicide of Lance Shingler, who served in Iraq, has never been officially recorded by the government. His loved ones believe he'd still be here if he'd had better support.
It's heartbreaking to watch two kids cry every day for their dad and miss their dad. It's heartbreaking to look back and think how much he actually begged for help and how much he was actually brutally honest with people to say, this is how ill I am, look, this is what's going on in my head on a daily basis.
I'll never get over it. For years, ITV News has followed bereaved families calling for better support for those who served their countries and came home with the trauma. Among them, Joe Jukes, whose husband, Lance Corporal Dave Jukes, took his own life in 2018.
He survived Northern Ireland, Bosnia, 2 Iraqs, Afghanistan, but his service killed him.
Today, finally, a victory, as the government has for the first time agreed to start officially recording veteran suicides in England and Wales.
How can you put support in place unless you know what the actual problem is? And until now, we haven't kind of looked at the statistics that lay behind that. So this is a massive step forward in that.
The government says the statistics will help focus support where it's needed.
Gathering the data is one step, but what more will you do to ensure that veterans get the support they need before it's too late?
Of course I have the deepest sympathy, and I think that's why I'm pleased that we're able to make some small changes today in the way we approach this in order that we might prevent future tragedies, because that's what this is all about. This has got to be about the tangible response.
For Hayley and many others, it all comes too late. Campaigners estimate 59 veterans have taken their lives so far this year. Rebecca Barry, ITV News, Solihull.
And if you've been affected by any of the issues raised by that report, there are details of where to find help and support on our website. The parents of Harry Dunn have reached a resolution in their civil claim for damages against his alleged killer. 19-year-old Harry died after a road crash in 2019 near a US airbase in Northamptonshire. American suspect Anne Sakoulas was able to leave the UK following the crash, claiming diplomatic immunity. And Hungary has been ordered by FIFA to play its next World Cup qualifying match behind closed doors after England players were subjected to racist abuse in Budapest earlier this month. The Hungarian FA has also been fined the equivalent of £159,000. Walls of unstoppable lava are continuing to flow on the island of La Palma, engulfing more homes and even boiling water as it swamps swimming pools. More than 6,000 residents have been told to evacuate, and experts say the eruptions could last for weeks. Dan Rivers has this report.
There is nothing that can survive the moving wall of molten rock relentlessly creeping across this landscape. Reservoirs, holiday homes, roads are all being consumed. This is high-speed geology, and it's reshaping this neighbourhood. Where just a few days ago holidaymakers relaxed, now nature is scouring it back to a barren volcanic desert. Boiling away man's attempts to cultivate and civilise this hillside with superheated rocks 1,000 degrees Celsius, creating a cauldron which will soon be buried forever. Animals are now being moved after the evacuation of more than 5,000 people. Firefighters are doing what they can to help salvage a few valued possessions. But this is a smash and grab operation before the lava eviscerates everything in its path.
I was outside in the garden and then I heard a noise like a bang. Then I saw something.
Smoke going up. Smoke going up.
Yes, and stone.
Cumbre Vieja means old summit. Tonight this ancient volcano has opened up a 9th river of fire, with no sign when the spectacular but devastating activity will peak. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
After 22 days without a sighting, Wally the walrus has been spotted again, but he appears to have left Britain's shores. He's been pictured resting in Iceland on his way back home to the Arctic. Well, he spent the summer touring Europe, visiting the waters around Ireland, the UK, France and Spain. And he wasn't always welcome. Finally tonight, from the unwelcome to the wanted. The boy band reunited last night in a very emotional gig at the Royal Albert Hall. It was to raise funds for cancer charities following singer Tom Parker's brain tumour diagnosis. Tom said he was absolutely overwhelmed by the support of his bandmates and fans, as Corrie reports.
A year ago, the Wanted's Tom Parker was struggling to get out of bed. Last night, he performed at the Royal Albert Hall with his bandmates with a comeback concert for charity. Their first gig for 7.5 years, and just 12 months since Tom's cancer diagnosis.
Got home, absolutely overwhelmed. It's 10 to 2 in the morning. I've done a little coffee, but I'm going to go to bed now. I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone involved. From the audience, all the fans, all the crew, just everyone involved, man. Everyone's just been amazing.
Ed Sheeran featured too, with a specially recorded performance, along with a host of other stars. All the proceeds being split between two charities, Stand Up to Cancer and the National Brain Appeal, following Tom's treatment for an inoperable brain tumour.
I feel like it's been quite nostalgic and nice to see everybody. It's good. I'm really happy to be along for this, and obviously it's a bit of a sad occasion in a way, but it's I'm just hoping I can help out any way I can, really.
Tom's aim is for the money raised to help fund research into possible breakthrough treatments for brain tumours like his, but also to offer hope and encouragement to other patients. Corrie, ITV News.
Nice one, Tom. Well done. Well, that's it from us. Julie's got your news at 10, but for me and the whole team, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.